Big Ten Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Big Ten Power Rankings. We are going bottom to top, so we are giving you two rankings. One ranking will be just simply my power ranking. That means I believe that the number one team in the Big Ten is the, in fact, best team in the Big Ten. Number two is, in fact, the second best team in the Big Ten, and so forth. The resume ranking, much like our top 25 that actually makes sense, is a resume ranking. It's not a projection about what's going to happen in the future, or that I think somebody got ripped off, or that the preseason perception was X, Y, and Z. It is based strictly on the resume. Who did you beat? Who did you lose to? How good are those teams? What were the results of those games? What was your performance in those games? All right, let's start at the bottom, and this one is not difficult to measure. Whether it's the power ranking or the resume ranking, it's all at the bottom of the Big Ten. Purdue. Boiler up. They fired their offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, for good reason. 38 points combined against Notre Dame, Oregon State, and Nebraska. They scored a touchdown this past weekend with 90 seconds left in the game at home. That was it for Graham Harrell. They've got a date at Wisconsin coming up, but Purdue is certainly, clearly, as of right now, the worst team in the Big Ten by every measure. At number 17, we've got Northwestern, but with the 16th ranked resume because they've been fairly competitive. They took Duke to overtime, a Duke team that is now 5-0. Northwestern should have won that game. They outplayed Duke. They had a one-score lead in the last couple minutes. They blew the game. The officials helped out in that matter. They lost in overtime. They had a decent win against Miami of Ohio. The quarterback play has been pretty bad with Mike Wright and Jack Lausch. The last time out in Big Ten play, they went out to Seattle and showed no offense, losing 24-5. At number 17 in the Big Ten is Northwestern. We figured, and everyone figured, that UCLA was going to be a bad football team this year, and we were all right. Look at these performances against Indiana. They just got blown out right out of the gate, even though Indiana had to come across country to the Rose Bowl for the first time in forever. UCLA down at 21-0. They lost by 29 points. The LSU game, they showed up in the first half. They scored on the last play of the first half in Death Valley and had a tie game, but they completely collapsed in the second half. And then this final game against Oregon, they were pretty much dead to rights to start the game and lost by 3 touchdowns. Ethan Garbers has thrown 6 interceptions already against only 3 touchdown passes. UCLA at 1-3. They're number 16 in the Big Ten. Their resume is 17. Maryland was a program under Mike Locksley showing progress from 7-6 to 8-5 to 8-5 and 3 consecutive bowl wins and playing much better against the hierarchy of the Big Ten until this season. Now, 2 teams that Maryland had been beating on a regular basis, Indiana and Michigan State, both L's this season. 0-2 in the Big Ten. Lost by 2 touchdowns in Bloomington. That should not happen. I know Indiana's better, but Maryland is taking steps in the opposite direction despite a decent season by quarterback Billy Edwards at number 15 in our power rankings. 15 on the resume slate. Maryland. Luke Fickell is running into that buzzsaw of a schedule for Wisconsin. It was Alabama, of course, coming to Camp Randall and laying waste, and now it's USC. Badgers led 21-10, had a couple opportunities early third quarter to go up 28-10, and then they got trucked by USC with 28 consecutive points as they collapsed. Tyler Van Dyke, Braden Locke, it doesn't seem to matter at quarterback for Wisconsin. Both are average. Meh. Number 14 in the Big Ten, all the way down at number 14 for the Badgers, the proud Wisconsin program, as they head to a matchup with Purdue this weekend on Wisconsin. Many people don't believe that PJ Fleck is long for Minnesota or Minnesota long for PJ Fleck. However, I don't know who's going to do a better job than PJ Fleck. Look at the game against Michigan. No, they did not win. 9-point underdog at Michigan, trailed 24-3, and then they maybe found some things. I don't know on offense. Max Brosmer took him down the field for 2 long drives against the Maize and Blue, and of course the onside kick was a ripoff by the officials. Minnesota could have had a chance to tie or win the game at the Big House, but it is what it is. As somebody once said, your record is who you are, and it's 2-3 right now with no good wins. Blown out by Iowa in the second half, lost to North Carolina in the final play of the game, and the schedule continues to give. USC in Minneapolis this weekend at number 13 in the Big Ten. Gophers. 38-7 is about what we expected for Michigan State against Ohio State this past weekend, but consider Aiden Childs looked really good in the first half, threw for almost about 150 yards passing, and Sparty had 3 trips in the red zone and came away with no points. Turnovers, stopped on downs, fumble, interception. Aiden Childs has thrown 8 this season. And yes, it turned out to be a blowout in the end. But positive signs for Michigan State. Look at the efforts against Maryland and Boston College. And again, a first half against the Buckeyes that was pretty stellar for Michigan State. They got a bye week to regroup, finish out the Big Ten schedule as our number 12 team in the conference. Washington was the biggest wild card in the Big Ten entering this season. New head coach, new coaching staff, new quarterback, 21 of 22 new starters, and of course a new conference. That's unprecedented. But Jed Fish knows what he's doing. Look at his tenure at Arizona. He brought a veteran quarterback with him, Will Rogers, one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of the SEC, and Washington's been pretty strong. Now, they got 2 losses, but man, are they heartbreakers. Missed field goal at the gun, going all the way across the country to Rutgers. And then, of course, they were stopped inside the 5-yard line for what would have been the game-winning touchdown in Apple Cup. So 2 losses for Washington. They're staring at a date with Michigan, and they're our number 11 team in the Big Ten. Is Nebraska ever going to beat a good team? Are they ever going to win a close game? Well, maybe they beat a good team in Colorado. The Buffs doing some work in the Big 12, but Nebraska laid waste to them. Against Illinois, they had control of that game with a 1-score lead and the ball late in the fourth quarter. Let that slip away. We've got to give some grace to Dylan Raiola as a young freshman quarterback. That's the first time he's faced adversity, first time he's played in a close game at that level. But Nebraska, still horrendous in 1-score games. Won the game by 3 scores. That's how they won the game, by 3 scores, not 1 score against Purdue this past weekend. Now, more than likely a 1-score game against hard-hitting Rutgers. So at number 10 in the Big Ten, GBR. Now we get to the Huskers' opponent this weekend in Lincoln. Gunning for 5-0, the Scarlet Knights beat Washington, beat Virginia Tech. Those are 2 decent wins. Look at what the Hokies did despite their record against Miami last Friday night. And Rutgers beat a decent Washington team. So tough defense, running game, and of course, they've got a better quarterback than they've had the past several seasons in Ethan Kalkimanis. Nothing prolific, nothing spectacular or explosive, but Rutgers can at least keep defenses honest. It's the number 9 team in the Big Ten in the power rankings, but number 6 according to the resume. Scarlet Knights. Illinois is a strong, stout, solid football team. They proved that in Happy Valley on Saturday night. They were completely outclassed. They were outgunned, but they stayed in the game because they're a physical, technically sound football team. Luke Altmaier's a good quarterback. Had 10 touchdowns and no picks until he threw a interception that cost them late in the game because they were still in the game despite being completely outgained. And after that first drive that they went up 7-0, being completely shut down offensively, they were still in a 14-7 lead game with 5 minutes left, but they lose to Penn State. But again, the defense is strong. The secondary is really good. Altmaier quarterback, strong team. Number 8 in the Big Ten. Number 5 resume belongs to Illinois. Coach of the year in the Big Ten. Team of the year in the Big Ten. Maybe nationally. IU. Of course, 5-0. Yes, they've beaten some lousy teams. But they went out to UCLA. They won convincingly. That's the difference this year against the bad teams. Against the really bad teams. Non-conference, the non-conference slate, awful. But Indiana blew them all out. They don't do that. They've never done that. And now they're taking on Big Ten teams like Maryland and winning by 2 scores. Not just eclipsing Maryland, who's been well ahead of them in the Big Ten standings in recent years, but now winning these games by double digits. They're 5-0. They go to Northwestern to get to 6. IU. Iowa can move the football and score points. I repeat, Iowa can move the football and score points. It's not pretty, it's not explosive, it's not prolific, and it's not according to the passing game that was supposed to be better this year. And I guess technically it is with Tim Lester running the show. But Tim Lester is smart enough to know veteran offensive line that's really tough, really technically sound, and a running back in Caleb Johnson who's now starting to get some Heisman hype with, look at the numbers. 206 against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. They had a bye week before the big challenge going to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. Look out for Iowa in a possible upset bid. I know they're a 24-point underdog and athletically outmatched in this one, but number 6 in the Big Ten right now, and the resume is number 9, Hawkeyes. Once USC got past its mistakes at the Coliseum against Wisconsin, they took care of the Badgers easily in the second half. USC are number 5 team in the Big Ten and very close to being number 1. Of course, we know what happened at the Big House against Michigan, a game in which they dominated from the second into the fourth quarter. But hey, that doesn't count. Too many big plays given up on defense. And they gave up some big plays to Wisconsin early, tightened it up, stopped the mistakes, and then the passing game and the running game and the playmakers on the outside overwhelmed Wisconsin. USC's number 5 in the Big Ten. They are number 3 in terms of a resume ranking. And they go to Minnesota to take on the Gophers this weekend. Michigan worked on the passing game. I know that seems like a bit of a joke, but they actually did work on the passing game and actually were better throwing the football. So if they take tiny little steps in the right direction, Alex Orji by the end of the year may even pass for 100 yards. The pass defense, though, a bit susceptible against Max Brosmer as Minnesota got back into the game, and the Maize and Blue hung on, thwarting an onside kick thanks to the officials by 3 points. Now they go to Washington, a 3-point underdog in a rematch of the national championship game. Still our number 4 team in the Big Ten. Michigan. Penn State did not mess around with Illinois. It became very obvious after the Illini's first drive that they just couldn't move the football consistently against the Penn State defense. So Penn State said, defense, running game, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, take us home. Drew Aller, take the night off. That's what Penn State delivered. It wasn't pretty. It was not dominant on the scoreboard, but they were clearly the better team, and the line of scrimmage play went State's way the entire way. Now they've got a week off. This is a bit of a gimme. With UCLA coming to town, Penn State should be in good shape. There are going to be more difficult tests down the road. At number 3 in the Big Ten, we are. The Ducks are starting to get it revved up as we enter October. Of course, they sleptwalk through games against Idaho and Boise State, but now with convincing wins, the last 2 times out against Oregon State and against UCLA, their first Big Ten win. They got a bye week to prepare for Ohio State. Wow, that will be most likely the game of the year in the Big Ten. At number 2 in the conference, Duck, the most talented team, the most loaded team, in some ways the most experienced team in the Big Ten, and the best team in the conference decidedly is Ohio State. They finally played a decent opponent, Michigan State. They did not dominate in the first half. Their defense was opportunistic, and they got the job done, and then broadened the lead. Jeremiah Smith, that was his game to shine on national TV against a decent opponent. Now, come the layers to the season. Awful non-conference, Michigan State, Iowa, Oregon. First, of course, the Hawkeyes. That's going to be a challenge. Can't wait to see this Hawkeye defense take on the Ohio State passing game in particular. The number 1 team in the Big Ten is clearly, at this point, until they face somebody who will give them a legitimate challenge, it's all Ohio State. Power rankings, one more time. Let's run them down. Buckeyes at 1, Ducks 2, Penn State 3, Michigan 4. 5 is USC, Iowa 6, Indiana 7, Illinois, and Rutgers. 10 is Nebraska, followed by Washington, Michigan State, Minnesota. 14, Wisconsin. 15, Maryland. UCLA's at 16, Northwestern and Purdue at the bottom. Now, the resumes look like this. Penn State's got the best resume with wins against West Virginia and Illinois in convincing fashion. Oregon 2, resume USC 3, then Indiana, Michigan, and then you've got Rutgers, Illinois, Ohio State on down the line with Iowa, Michigan State, Nebraska at 11, Washington 12, Wisconsin 13, Minnesota 14, and the bottom 4, Maryland, Northwestern, UCLA, and Purdue. Those are our Big Ten power rankings and resume rankings. A 2-for-1 right here at the Voice of College Football. Please like and subscribe.